And Kevin, thank you for joining us again, and nice to see you. And you have the floor.
Carter, I'll steal your line. It's nice to be seen. So thank you for letting us join you this morning. We've got a brief presentation that we'll go through, but please feel free to ask questions during, after. The most important part of this communication is really establishing dialogue between Crowe and the audit committee. You know, in its most simplistic terms, I always try to remind people that we work directly with management, but we work for you. So as you have questions, concerns, not only today, but as we move forward throughout the audit process, always feel free to reach out directly to me, Danielle, or other members of the team with regards to those issues. Our cover, I guess we're trying to embrace the idea of virtual, but it seems like these four aren't social distancing quite as well as they should. But we're not concerned. We hope to be on site with you guys at some point during fiscal year or this upcoming audit, but we're not concerned. If you remember, we conducted the entire audit this past fiscal year remotely. Your team did an absolutely admirable job in responding to our request, both from an internal control as well as standard procedure standpoint. So we have the utmost confidence that this audit will proceed as planned in accordance with the approach that we're going to outline today. If you advance to the next slide. So what we plan to do today is very briefly, introductions, speak to our audit plan, cover some required communications that are outlined by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, or AICPA. And then, as I said, the most important aspect is answering any questions that you might have. Thank you. With you today is myself. I serve as the engagement partner for you. I also have Danielle Shriver on the phone to make sure that I don't say anything stupid, or if you ask too hard of questions, I can always go to Danielle. We also have another manager, senior manager, Michelle Buss, who was not able to join us today, that many of you know. Now, kind of the most important part I would point out here is your team has been really consistent. I think that was incredibly important this past year, even more so than normal years. And I think it's always important to have this consistent team as possible, but really, you know, enable to communicate with your management team, understand their businesses and processes, and translate those to the COVID environment and how the COVID had impacted you guys, and really try to, you know, your people don't continue to have day jobs. So it's really, and the audit is additive. So we really try to make sure that we're as effective and as efficient as possible, not distracting them from their daily work, but nonetheless fulfilling those audit requirements that the audit committee has engaged us to do. Next slide, please. Again, I offered, this is kind of definition of role for each of the people that we have outlined today, as well as Corey, who will lead the engagement on a day-to-day basis. That is my email address, my phone number. Please feel free to contact me with any questions or concerns that you might have as we move forward. Next slide. Our timeline for delivery of services, very consistent with previous years. Again, not concerned about meeting these timelines and deadlines based upon the past experience of the previous fiscal year, regardless of the COVID impact. I say that with one kind of cautionary caveat. You know, I think both you and us have learned to work in the remote environment. I always try to remind everybody that we are in a global pandemic, and there's a reason for that. There is the opportunity for key personnel on either side to become sick and unavailable for a certain time period. But with that said, this is a very achievable timeline. It's got a variety of places along the critical path that I think if things slip, we would still be meeting with you in late July. So no concerns, but that would be the one caveat, is actual illness, but nothing from a remote work environment standpoint. This would be one area where I'd also say, again, if you have any communications, if anything strikes you as, you know, unreasonable within this timeline, the sooner we hear about it, the better. But again, it is consistent with what workforces have done in the past. Next slide. These are the required communications, and really it's spelled out to just kind of remind everybody and ground everybody with what an audit is. I was laughing before the tape started about everybody trying to explain to their children what they did. As you read these bullets, try to imagine me explaining to my 8-year-old what a CPA or an auditor did. Finally, we settled on I helped the mayors count their cash. But the auditor responsibility under generally accepted auditing standards is we form an opinion, and hopefully you would receive an unmodified opinion, which means that the financial statements that have been prepared by management with the oversight of you, those charged with governance, are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Our audit does not relieve management or those charged with governance of their responsibilities. So we all kind of have a seat at the table. Management's responsible for the preparation. We're responsible for the audit opinion. And this committee is charged with oversight of both of us. We're responsible for performing our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. Those are promulgated by the AICPA. And due to the level of federal and state funding that you receive, we also perform the audits in accordance with government auditing standards that are issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. I always try to remind people that we design our audit to obtain reasonable, which is a high level of assurance, but not absolute assurance about whether the financial statements are free of material misstatement. In order to obtain absolute, we would have a person every day of the year sitting behind every one of your accounting clerks looking at every entry as it was posted. We rely very heavily upon a couple of concepts of materiality. What is the level of error that could change a user's perception or decision making as it relates to the financial statements, as well as sampling. We include consideration of internal control over financial reporting. We test internal control in order to determine how much substantive test work we need to do. So the better the internal controls and the more reliance, it reduces the level of the substantive procedures, but they're very intermingled and interlinked. It's not a PCAOB audit that you might see on a public company where we're actually opining upon the internal control structure. It is really, it's an interaction of trying to determine and design the appropriate procedures. At the conclusion of the audit, it's our responsibility to communicate any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses with this group, as well as if we identified fraud or the potential for fraud within our audit. We would obviously go first to the C-level group or the management team here on this meeting, unless there was some reason to believe that they were somewhat responsible or involved. And then, Carter, we would be reaching out directly to you. So we try to follow the chain of command, but again, ultimately always reporting back to the audit committee. I say that, again, a required communication. In previous years, we've never had any issues such as this. I don't anticipate any in this year. But kind of the really good thing about the audit process is we kind of have to wipe our slate clean and really imagine and test as if we've never been there before. And really with COVID-19, you know, we think about fraud from a triangle standpoint: opportunity, rationalization, and incentive. And COVID-19 really provides some rationale that hasn't existed in the past. So we will do additional brainstorming procedures as well as targeted procedures throughout our engagement to address that. Next slide. So this, again, continuing with our responsibilities to communicate to you, the key first bullet is really key because of the single audit or the nature of your federal and state regulations. Anything required or under law or regulations that we identify will communicate to you through the single audit. Any information such as the combining schedules will describe what audit procedures were performed on those, although no actual opinion. Again, we have a concept of materiality, but I think it's really key to think about you guys in two ways. You're a very unique organization. For the typical not-for-profit or quasi-governmental entity, you audit the financial statements, and then, oh, by the way, you do the single audit. because you may have 100 million in revenue and 5 million of grant money. You guys are the exact opposite in that you are your grant money. And the federal government, as well as the state government, really doesn't embrace the concept of materiality, with the exception of one area or two areas. One, in determining what major programs are. So those programs greater than $750,000 go through a robust risk assessment. And then from a finding perspective, we do have some latitude as to if it's a finding, whether or not we have to bring it to you as well as the federal or state regulators' oversight. That materiality is $10,000. So as you can imagine, they don't have much materiality. But from a financial statement perspective, we really look at it quantitatively and qualitatively and think about, because the financial statements most likely will have an error, even with after our financial statements. That error could be as simplistic as payroll was, or one person's payroll was charged in one line item when it should have been in another. That would not change any user of the financial statements perception. So that's where I'm saying we're not guaranteeing that the financial statements are free of material or free of misstatement, but we are opining upon the fact that they are free from material misstatement. We address significant risk of material statement, whether due to error or fraud. So really our focus is whether there's a material misstatement, regardless of how it's caused. Significant risk, again, for this organization really is embedded within the federal grant and state grant compliance. And we test internal control both over compliance as well as aspects within the financial statements. The final bullet on fraud I covered in a previous slide. So next slide. And I somewhat stole my thunder earlier as well, but we will, as part of our audit process, we make inquiries with each of you as audit committee members. Not doing it right now because it is being recorded in a public format, but welcome you to speak up if you have any issues or concerns, but we will be reaching back out to you on an individual basis. But this is really where, and again, that communication is required by auditing standards, but it's about kind of your perception of tone at the top, as well as, for lack of better words, and I hate the phrase, what keeps you up at night? Where do you believe that fraud could exist if it did occur? We take that information both from management as well as those charged with oversight, as well as our existing knowledge of you specifically, as well as trends within the industry. And we have a brainstorming exercise where we go through and we identify everywhere where we think that potential exists and really risk weight that opportunity that it could occur, and then design our procedures accordingly. And again, if anything was identified at that point in time, we would bring it, Carter, to your attention through the appropriate directions. Next slide. So when we do circle back with you, these are the items that we'll discuss with you. Do you have any knowledge of fraud or suspected fraud affecting the entity? Are you aware of any allegations of fraud or suspected fraud? What are your views, again, at the tone of the top regarding fraudulent activity? Do you believe that you are provided enough information to exercise your oversight with regard to these activities? And then just kind of a blanket other, anything of nature that you would like to discuss personally one-on-one at that point in time. Next slide, please. That's our audit plan. Again, it's happy to answer any questions that you might have. We do appreciate the ability to continue to work with you. You are a very important client to Crowe. Even more importantly, you do amazing work within the community, and years like 2020, and I'm afraid at least for a while in 2021, just highlights the importance of what it is that you guys do, and we're honored to call you guys a client of the firm, so thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Ashley, if you could not share the screen so we could see everybody again, thank you. Christina has joined us now, welcome. And Dan, welcome, glad you guys are here. As the treasurer, I really, it's important that you on this committee ask the questions you need to ask. Uh, Kevin's done a great job of defining our role as oversight. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you what my role is. And quite frankly, I did not seek this position and felt like Lyndon Johnson, I will, if asked, I will not serve. And but nonetheless, we're here. But the word treasurer scared the daylights out of me because I was afraid that that meant in every organization I've been with, treasurer was the one that oversees the funds. And I wanted to assure the committee I have no checkbook. I'm not a signator. I have no access to funds. So I took the role on knowing that we would form a strong committee and that that committee would be the backbone of this group. There is a very, very comfortable relationship between this organization and the auditors. And that's actually a good thing because as Kevin really pointed out, this is a unique organization that we're handling grants. That's basically what most 99% of the funding is all coming from grants and how we handle those. But nonetheless, you as committee members, you're charged with oversight. And the worst thing to do is not ask the question. So I think Kevin's done a great job of defining their role. But I wanted to, assure each one of you that we expect you to ask questions. I'm new in this role. I don't, I have the highest level of confidence with the team at all levels and what they're doing, what they've done. Of course, the good work that they do, but how it's done financially, I have all the confidence in the world in that. But if you see something, it's okay to question. It's okay to question anything. And Dan, your experience with massive budgets is critical for us. We all are going to play roles in certain areas, and I just, we all, come together as a team with different perspectives. So Kevin, the only question that I have, is there anything different that you see this year that you haven't seen other than the COVID and the aspects relating to that? Is there anything financially that you see different this year? And Ashley, I'll ask you that as well from a financial standpoint that we should be aware of.
We're just beginning our planning process. I think twofold. One, Ashley can probably speak to immediately, and the second is yet to be determined. Although I don't think will impact 12/31/20 to a great extent. First and foremost is the CARES Act, and really the lack of guidance surrounding the CARES Act. It has been very much a spend it as fast as you can. We'll tell you the regulations. Oh, wait, you didn't do that. This is the regulation. And it's been the same on the auditing guidance. So compliance around the CARES Act, very unique in the current year and will be a focus of our attention, but it's been a focus of management's attention. The second aspect, anytime we have significant change, and in this case, not just the executive branch, but the legislative branch, at the federal level. So although I don't anticipate significant changes as it relates to 12/31/20, I do think that it could be occurring. It really has an impact upon that kind of audit and compliance aspect as well. I think that the level of scrutiny that the feds will be asking for will increase. And to a great extent, I think it could, for the first time in my life, I think it does have an aspect of going backwards from a political standpoint. I don't think it's any secret that current administration or current Senate would disagree vociferously with a lot of things that the current administration has done, and that includes the CARES Act and how it was administered. So I think for the first time in my career, I think there could be some crossover and continuing to have a state of flux as it relates to compliance. So it's very important that Ashley continues to be very actively involved with TWC, which she is. I have the confidence that they're addressing it. The long answer, Carter, to say those CARES Act and the change in administration are the two aspects that are unique in the current year.
Okay. And I would just follow up to that relating to the CARES Act. Are there any particular reserves we should put in place? Or are there things that we should do to protect ourselves financially in preparation of greater oversight in that area?
If I could, Carter, there's ample money for special projects for monitors. And our financial monitor is a certified auditor as well. Let me just, and I'll just lay it out. I'm not going to name names. But in team, we actually got a customer complaint. In January of 20, we dispatched our monitor. It was very formidable to go out, talk to customers, find out. We then filed a potential fraud case with the state. From that point, we withheld all funds to that proprietary school. I'm now finding from the school itself notifying me that half of the money I'm holding, the state wants back. So we are very conservative when things come up. So we are using our monitors. We do have money in reserve to make sure we have access to those professionals because we know so much can happen. The second thing I'm concerned is the CARES Act money flowed through us through workforce. That's fine. That's TWC. We also then took funding from the city of Dallas, which I cannot explain how risk averse those lawyers are, to the point that no money got out to people. The Dallas County and city of Irving, and also from foundations. So we had CARES Act money flowing through us. These were the micro grants to shore up child care centers. So we may see that we're going to get other monitoring from County of Dallas, City of Irving. And that's unusual and unique. I'll just point that out. So that is going to not really affect what Kevin's doing, but we may have other people looking at our books. We did not spend anything we didn't understand, Kevin, I'll tell you that. We're holding on to money that made no sense. I've got $1.3 million right now that I am afraid to spend, $1.7 million, because the state and the feds can't agree on it. So we're having a sit down with the state and the federal government later this month to just fact it out. I need to know exactly what I can do with this money. I don't want to find out 3 months after we've tried to spend it. And that would be to facilitate unemployed people to work for the county, perhaps in the vaccine centers, the distribution centers, and how to vaccinate. We're just trying to, we have money to serve probably about 69 people who could be workers in the COVID environment, but the rules have been ridiculous. The rules make no sense. And so we are asking for that. We just keep going back and back and back. So that's just two pieces of the puzzle that I'm aware of. But yes, we do have financial reserves. Ashley and I, if anything, the state gets annoyed that we're so conservative in our spending and we do not over budget ever. So that's where we are today.
Well, that's great to hear. Thanks for walking us through that. You know, when it comes to audits and when it comes to prickly matters, intentions don't amount to anything. The best of intentions are thrown out the window, and we see that politically, and it's going to be a very politically charged environment for a while. So Kevin, thanks for pointing out, you know, the change in administration, what that might mean, and how that will impact us. Being conservative is obviously the best approach, Lori, and you've clarified that.
Carter, I think it's, you know, I'll share something with you just candidly because of the role of the audit committee. If I were to imagine an organization with less than 30 employees administering $150 million in grants, in a lot of respects, it would be what we would deem to be a high-risk entity. We do not consider your organization as a firm to be a high risk, and that's based, again, and we have to wipe the slate clean every year when we do our audit. but I do not, nor does the firm consider you to be high risk based upon past experience. And that past experience is everything that Laurie just said, the conservative nature and the understanding of the grants before they spend. I keyed in on one of the comments that you made. The best intentions really don't matter, when it comes down to these things. And I think Laurie would be the first to tell you, and I appreciate what she's saying about why she hadn't spent the 1.7 yet. Program managers will tell you spend it, and it's all okay, and we'll even write it and say, hey, it's okay. Inspector generals don't really care what the program director told you. So everything that Laurie just said is absolutely critical in your role as oversight. Those are the questions. How are we handling that? That I would say you need to be asking. It's the questions that I have for Laurie every year, where, what unique grants are causing you concern, and how are you managing through those? And that's really the key aspect of mitigating risk within this organization. Because if you spend it, you guys don't have other sources of revenue. If you spend it and they ask for it back, that becomes very, very difficult.
Right. Well, and again, that part of my question for anything unique this year relates to previous years where we had a unique grant and we recorded it one way and we should have recorded it another way. Anything like that that is unique, let's ask now, let's focus on it now versus finding out later.
And Carter, and I don't want to go backwards too much, but it was two things. One, it was a relatively unique grant, and it was also right at the time that generally accepted accounting principles changed. So it was the confluence of two separate kind of elements. From a cash perspective and a conservative standpoint, management accounted for it properly. It just wasn't in accordance with the new accounting standards from Norwalk, Connecticut. So from an audit committee standpoint, no concerns. From an auditing standards, I had to communicate it to you.
Good. Well, again, I don't want to go back either, but
I appreciate the vein that you offer that in, and we will let you know of significant or unusual transactions.
Right. Jason?
Yeah, the only thing more philosophical, it may be a repeat. I apologize. I'm going to ask it differently. When you think about the environment that we can anticipate that we're in, we can anticipate what to the best of our ability what the future may be like. Do we anticipate more grants coming in more than normal? And I call it, because there's going to be more need, clearly, more grants coming in, more opportunities. And then as a result, just the level of, here you go, give it, pull it away from the grants, that complexity. I think we have a good base. I think we have a great established relationship and rhythm and experience. But are there concerns around more money being thrown our way and how we manage that from different angles, from different players that may not have historically been people we have established relationships with? Does that make sense, the question?
Yeah, it does. And there's some good answers there. There's some scary answers. I've done this a very long time, so I've been through a lot of the ups and downs. I am thrilled to see Mayor Marty Walsh to head up Department of Labor. And we have a relationship with Mayor Walsh because he has been active on the Workforce Council of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, of which I'm part of the leadership circle. So I'm feeling good about that. What I can tell you about 2010, and President-elect Biden headed up the ARRA. This was the Recovery Act. I'm anticipating a semi-repeat of the ARRA, and that was no walk in the park. People in my job had to sign on the dotted line that we would personally go to jail if we misspent that money. That's how serious. The new funding is already starting. Child care, and I have Reagan Miller, the child care director for the state of Texas, appearing at our board meeting in a week. Texas is going to get $1 billion in child care money now. And it's like, seriously? That could mean as much as, and it may mean $100 million more in child care in our budget. So more than double. It's ridiculous. Are we able to handle it? Yes. My concern would be the bandwidth at childcare group. And I would have to see their board, and that may be a meeting to have with me appearing with their board to talk about the bandwidth to handle this kind of money. They're amazing in their space, but much like ours, they're pivotal people. If those people move, leave, stop doing this, the people who had experience in 2010, the learning curve is just not there. You have to hit the ground running. The same would be true about the potential for a summer jobs program. And that was thrown at us in ARRA. We had February notice of multi-million dollars and had to kick in a summer program for 1,000 kids by June. That could happen again if the vaccine is out and if we have the environment where people can actually get out and work. I can kind of parrot non-politically, but Kevin's point is well taken. In all of my history, Republican administrations give us a whole lot more money in workforce. We don't compete. We have a better competition base because workforce is the least abhorrent of the social services. We're not food stamps. We're not welfare. We're get a job. So where we are now, with a Democratic administration, we get more dig in and more philosophy, more theory, more testing of how the program works. The last time we got a gold standard review that took 5 years with them. So I'm expecting theory, I'm expecting money, I'm expecting inspector generals, many of whom I know by name. In the old days, I actually would call the OIG to come out. I'm not fearful of it, but I am as cautious as your question, Jason. We are going to get formidable funds from the same sources. Now, in addition, I've got a few future funders. I'm not pushing our planning department to go out and get me grants, but people are coming to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people are coming to us.
It just puts, it's a great point, and thank you. It's just something we kind of talked about before, but it's something that's been top of my mind relative to, and I'm not going to say how we audit, how we operate, right? But it's the other arm, how we partner, how really good is our partnerships, how much do we have trust but verify that they're doing the right things representing us, because I'm not worried about us going down, but as others get criticized and they find loopholes and it's not, some of our peer groups aren't run as well, the tension comes on to us because anyway, that you get the point. So.
Thank you for the question. I think it's a really good question.
Well, and Lori, thanks for reminding us of the Recovery Act. I recall that it's impossible to even fathom how thick the act was, that they were just printing this paper that no one could even possibly read and attaching money to it. And again, the thought is, well, yeah, grab the money, but if you don't follow those regulations, then it's not good. So I think our oversight to be cautious is paramount. And I also think that regulations will increase. We saw a lot of regulations under previous administrations, and somewhere in the middle is the right, but I think we can anticipate further regulations, which causes us to be even more cautious and more conservative. Any other questions from the group? Okay, Jason, thank you. I think we have explored our audit team. And Kevin, thank you for being with us, and Danielle, and being open and putting your information out there. We look forward to working with you, and glad that we have consistency in our audit team. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item really is from Ashley, who's going to take us through our new board orientation.
Yes.
I would tell the team that my first endeavor was to meet Kevin and Ashley and go through background and examine, how they work and what they've done. And for what it's worth, I can tell you that, we have a very seasoned team. Ashley's the CFO. Her background is in auditing. She actually, Workforce was a client of hers. So we have a very seasoned professional at the top. And I'm very comfortable, as I said, with the relationship with the auditor and the relationship that that our organization has with them. And then I also am very comfortable with the staff that we have and the job that they're doing. And those aren't untested words. You know, I have had several meetings with Ashley, and we've gotten to know each other a little bit. She knows that I can ask direct questions, and that's what we need to do. And so don't be afraid to do that. So I'll turn it over to you, Ashley. Thank you.
Thanks, Carter. Yes, I'm Ashley Verner, Chief Financial Officer for the board, and I've been with the board 6 years. Like Carter said, I used to work for KPMG, and Workforce Solutions Greater Dallas was one of our clients. My boss actually at the time was Kevin Smith, who you just met. So he taught me everything I know, so it better be right, you know. So yeah, we do have a great working relationship with them. I went and worked for American Airlines for a few years, and then I came to the account manager. And for the last couple of years, I've been the CFO. My real claim to fame is that I have triplets who just turned 9 years old this month. So at any point during a meeting, you might see them run or glide by on a hoverboard behind me. And I will say, we were talking before the meeting, what do your kids think you do? And I think it's really helped them for me to be working from home and them to see me on the phone and the computer, because prior to this, I could not convince them that I was not a police officer. With officer in my title, they wanted to see my uniform and my badge. So this has helped, and I don't get those police officer questions from them anymore. So since the Finance Committee is made up of all new committee members this year, we would like to begin with an orientation, so to speak. I'd like to welcome you all to the committee and thank you for your service to the board. I hope that you'll find your involvement within the committee to be enjoyable and a great learning experience to expand upon your knowledge of our finances and how they relate to the programs we provide to reach our customers. I thought maybe we could start. I know y'all have already kind of asked some questions, and Carter's introduced himself and background in the position, but I wanted to give you each an opportunity to say hello before we kind of dive into some financial reports. So Holly, you're at the top of my screen. Do you want to say hello to the group?
Hello, everybody. I'm kind of excited to learn a little bit more. I did tell Carter the last time we talked about this, finances isn't my is not my strong suit or specialty. So this will be a little bit of a learning opportunity for me too. So thank you.
We're excited to have you. And Jason is our seasoned member because he was on the committee in the past. Jason, would you like to say any words?
I always want to say something, but I'm gonna keep it brief and be brief and be gone, as they say. Well, I'm honored. I don't know about seasoned because remember, I'm in HR, so I do HR math. It's a little different than finance math. But no, looking forward to it. I think my expectation is this will be like walking out with a degree in finance when we're done with this for me. So, and I don't have that. So there we go. No, I look forward to partnering with you all and better understanding the intricacies of how things are operating and how we can support.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you for your service. And Dan, good morning. Good to see you again.
Good morning. It's nice to see everyone, and I'm looking forward to working with you all. This is a smaller budget than the Dallas ISD budget, but the same principles apply. That you have to watch where the money goes, and you have to have the right controls in place. And I'm looking forward to being part of this team. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Christina, hello. She's on mute there. Well, if Christina comes back later, she can say hello to the team. I want to introduce our wonderful accounting manager, Rowena Ho. She's also on the call, and she's been with 11 years. She's a vital piece of our fiscal unit. Rowena, would you like to say hello to everybody, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Rowena. I'm the accounting manager. I'm with the agency for 10.5 years. And it's a good place to work here. I work for Ashley and Lori. They're very, very nice people, and I love them. Our team is always busy, so if Ashley is busy, you can always contact me for questions. And I'm very happy here to see and meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you. I think everybody's had a chance to talk now, whether it was earlier with Kevin or just in meeting one another. So this morning, I want to give you a brief overview of Finance Committee expectations. We typically just meet a couple of times a year outside of the board meetings, and we went ahead and added a third meeting to our calendar this year since it's a new committee, just to go over this overview. So we went through the 2020 fiscal year 2020 audit plan with Kevin this morning, and our fiscal year is January through December, a calendar year. Next month, we have a meeting on the calendar to go over the fiscal year 2021 budget. And if you have more audit questions, Kevin has graciously agreed to come back next month. We also meet in the July or early August timeframe after our annual audit, once again with Kevin. And at that time, he'll go over our audit results with you in a more in-depth format than what you're used to in the August board meeting. So this morning we've met our key players and we've talked about our annual agendas and goals. So let me take minutes to walk through some of our monthly reports. You'll get your January board packet later this week for our meeting next week. So let's go back and look at the most recent board packet from October. And Lori sent some excerpt pages out to you yesterday, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Here we go. I want to give you a brief explanation of what you will see at each meeting regarding the money. Now, in January, we plan to have a new program snapshot page with some charts and graphs, so be looking for that in your board packet this week. But we will keep these detail pages for you as well. The first page that you will see is the detail expenditure report. This is where we break down that $135 million overwhelming budget by grant, so you can see how much we have in WIOA, or Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funding, versus childcare or other grants. I want to go over what each of the columns on this report mean. Let me just come down to the next page where I have some more notes. So you, as the board member, can completely ignore this first column or the fund number. The only people on this call who could tell you off the top of our heads that Fund 2266, for example, is associated with the SNAP grant would be Rowena or me. This is for tracking in our general ledger. You might actually focus on this contract name column. This is what the Texas Workforce Commission, or TWC, has named each grant. The contract number here is the number assigned to the grant by TWC, and the end date is the final date in the grant's service period. You might really get interested when you see the budget amount for each grant in this column. After that, we're showing you the cumulative expenses. Now, let me stop a moment and point out that this report in the October board packet was as of August 2020. So each month we're presenting to you on a 2-month lag. That just has to do with the timing of our board meetings. These expenses are all due to the state on the 20th of each month. So for our board packet to go out to you this Friday for the January meeting, I won't quite have finalized a report tied up with a nice neat bow for you all based on December numbers. So I'll be reporting November numbers to you. And when I say cumulative expenses here, I'm talking about since grant inception for each grant, not since January 1st or the beginning of our fiscal year. So, for example, on this page, if we look at this first blue line highlighted, the SNAP grant or Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, this grant begins October 1st annually and ends September 30th of the following year. So in this cumulative expenses column, I'm showing you what we spent October 1st, 2019 through August 31st, 2020. When you get the report prior to a board meeting, you might take a look at this percent expended column. Percentage expected is based on the percentage of the grant period time that has passed since inception. This obligations column denotes the amount that we have obligated in a contract to a subgrantee or vendor and is remaining in their budget. Once they actually charge us for expenses, our obligation in this column is reduced and the amount of expenditures will populate in this cumulative expenses column. We also calculate, let me move my Zoom meeting over. We also calculate total expenses and obligations, and then also that number as a percentage of the total grant budget. Now, what do all the blue lines mean that I present to you on these pages? Oh, I went down a little too far. Okay. When I get up to present each month, I'm not generally giving you items for board action. What I have is just the piece of the story showing you what money is available. That way, when Demetria comes in later to request that the board approve moving forward with obligating additional money to Equus, for example, you already know that we have that money available in our grants. So, for example, I have this second blue line on the page for the SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, for the new year, 2021, with a budget of $800,000. And I mentioned to you during the October board meeting that this money came to us from TWC in addition to our normal SNAP grant, after we had already come to you in September to obligate SNAP funds for the new program year, 2021. So we have additional money to obligate. And then later, Demetria came up in the meeting to present her contracts, and she asked you to approve a portion of this $800,000 to obligate to Equus in their current contract. So when I'm highlighting these blue lines, it's to signify that I'm going to be discussing those grants with you during the meeting. There's one other quick report I want to go over with you, but first I'll pause for any questions on the detailed expenditure report and its purpose. Well, that's good. But if you have questions later, feel free to ask, or during a board meeting, of course. Right, the other report that we present monthly is our financial statements on one page. At the top of this page, you have our statements of financial position for the previous December, in addition to the month we're reviewing. In this case, it's August. I don't go over this page at every single meeting, but of course, if you have questions after your review, you're welcome to ask me. I guess what I'd note here is something Carter and I have been discussing a lot recently. And this is going to sound so strange to you based on any personal or business experience you have. But this cash line on our balance sheet is really not telling you a whole lot. You see, we're only allowed to keep 3 days of cash on hand per TWC rules. So the amount of cash we have at any particular time is really just telling you what kind of payments we have coming up in the near future. I can tell you in this instance, you see a large fluctuation in cash from December versus August. And I would tell you that is because the state shuts down their system in which we draw cash at the end of August every year. And we won't receive cash again until a week or so into the month of September. So the state allows us to draw extra cash at that time so we can pay our bills during the time period their system is shut down. At the bottom of this page, you see our statements of activities, again, for the current month and for December. You might want to focus on this revenues from grants and contracts line. You'll see that in 2019, we had a total of $134 million in revenues from grants and contracts. If you prorate that amount, we would have about $90 million in this line through the month of August, or 8 out of 12 months. But as you can see, we're showing $105 million in August. And that makes a lot of sense. And we talked about it during this meeting because we had those additional funds during 2020 due to COVID and CARES Act money, particularly in childcare. So you've heard a lot about that during the board meetings. Thanks for sticking with me through those two reports. There isn't quite enough time to dive that deeply into them during the board meetings. So I just wanted to make sure everybody on the committee has a good overview of what we're presenting to you. But of course, if you have any questions about these reports, I'd be happy to go over them. And that's really what I wanted to go over today, was kind of what we're presenting to you monthly and our goals for the year. And now really we're open for Carter to move on to the general discussion.
Yeah, and before we do that, Ashley is absolutely correct. I've never been in an organization where you talk about fraud and things like that, and then you say, but don't worry about the cash. So it's sort of contrary to what your instincts are and what my instincts are as well. So I think the more information we have, the better off we are, not to get down in the weeds. And there's so much information here. I really think that, as a board member, you've got to look at these packages before we walk in there cold. In the new board member orientation, there were a section that you guys created and provided that I thought was very helpful. And I would like to get it out to this group. It's page 49, 50, 51, and 52 that you put in the new board orientation. It helps you delineate between grant money and then administrative money. So really that's important for us to realize that there's all these grants, they're providing services for specific contracts, but also there's expenses, and we have to pay people, and we have to pay rents, and so those are in another bucket, and those are kind of broken out on those pages that I talked about. So if you wouldn't mind sending that out, Dan, you probably have it because you were in the new orientation, but maybe the other members don't have those reports. and I found them very helpful.
Carter,
So-
I think I sent that package to the entire board because it was new. So I
Okay,
think everybody, even veterans, got that packet. I hope. Holly, so yes.
Yeah, I did, and I actually reviewed it. I had forgot, it's been a while since I went through orientation, Lori, so I was like, oh, this is helpful for me to just even go back and sort of think about some of the other things. So I did look at some of that too, Carter. I think that is a good point for all of us to go back and refresh that.
well, I'm glad I'm not the only one that doesn't have a life and had time to do that. So, but yeah, please take a look at that, and it's in a format that was most comfortable for me. Okay, so in addition, there is a schedule that is on page 51. That's the lease schedule. And Lori always talks about that, but again, look at that because that will help you know what leases are coming up and what their dates are and what the dynamics are. Of course, all that's been thrown up in the air with COVID and the need for office space right now when clients can't come to it. So there's a lot of stuff in there that is just unique to COVID. Same issues we're all facing from corporate world. Do I renew a lease that nobody goes to, and how much space I need and all that. So that schedule's on there. I would also ask that we have an insurance schedule. I know you have one, but it should be in the package as well. Dan, that's probably something you can help us look at from a legal view to make sure that we have. I know we have a broker that handles that for us. Is it Marsh or yeah, Marsh? Yeah. So we've got someone overlooking that, which is great. But each one of you have different areas of expertise, and in as far as insurance, that's something for us also to look at. I don't have any other comments about the financials. Anybody? Anything else we need to discuss? All right. Well, I'll just close again by thanking each one of you for being on this committee. It's important. Ashley pointed out we really only meet 3 times a year. So it's important that, do your homework, look at the numbers, ask questions, and hopefully you found this helpful for the next board meeting when we meet, that you'll know what we should be zeroing in on and focusing on. So I'll entertain any questions.
I need action item. Please don't anybody hang up. The action for this committee is to accept the annual audit plan as submitted by Crow and authorize Carter to present it to the full board in a week.
Okay, so we'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Holly, and can I get a second?
I second.
Jason's got seconded. Any discussion regarding that? All right, well, let's throw it up for a vote. All in favor, say aye or indicate with your raised hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Any objections? No objections? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you all very much. I didn't want us to hang up before we got that done. Are we sure, Ashley, that's all the action you needed this month, correct?
Yes, and Kevin's on our calendar for next month. You want me to keep him there to answer any other questions that you might think of over the next month?
Well, if we could get his hard copy presentation to this group, that would be helpful, and then that might bring up some questions.
It was attached to the invitation for the Zoom meeting.
Okay.
So hopefully, if I tell you what though, why don't I just send it out with the board packet so the whole board has the presentation?
That'd
We
be
won't
great.
belabor it in the meeting, but you guys, I'll just say it's a pre-read and that you'll be recommending, the committee will be recommending that we approve the plan and move ahead.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sorry to hold you guys up, but thank you so much for doing this today. This is our second time to do virtual with the finance committee. This is interesting, but it is good. And I like these more intimate small groups. That has helped us, I think, in communication. So we're going to keep it up, Carter. Thank you for all your help and for pulling this together. We are going to get two things in front of you for the meeting, which would be a more in-depth look at two of the funds that you suggested to Ashley. So I thank you for that suggestion. It's causing us to think more clearly about how we communicate these ridiculously extensive government issues. And so we are looking at two for the board meeting next week. Hopefully that will go over well, and then we'll take all the feedback and we'll keep going through them, plotting through. I think we're going to take up Workforce Investment Act funding first, which is kind of the cornerstone of workforce, and the TANF, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families, which has been on hiatus for a year. But it helped us to look at the continuity of grants. Some grants are 24 months, some are 13 months. It's quite confusing. And so if we can't communicate it, then we got to do better with the board. So thanks for your input on that.
Of course, I think small, so breaking things down is, very helpful for me. But again, we're all honored to serve, this board and to be a part of a great organization doing great work in Dallas. So reconfirm what you guys are doing. So thank you very much. All right, well, I'll let you guys have the rest of your day. And again, thanks for starting off with this morning.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you guys.
Thank you. Good to see everybody. Be safe.
Here.
Thank you.